Welcome to my channel.
And this is English Podcast Station.
All right, welcome to the deep dive. You know, one thing we hear a lot from English learners, especially if they're really going for that natural, effortless kind of sound, or maybe prepping for the IELTS, is how to make those words really flow together. You know, like it can almost feel like a puzzle trying to get past that sound of, you know, every word being separate and on its own, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is one of the more, I guess you could say, one of the more fascinating parts of learning the language. And you're spot on. It's not about speed. Mm-hmm. You know, think about it. Connected speech, it's almost like the secret ingredient that native speakers they just do it without even thinking about it, you know. And when you master that, oh man, that takes both your speaking and listening to a whole new level.
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today, giving you listening and some seriously practical, hands-on stuff you can do on your own. We're talking techniques, resources, the whole shebang, so you can really tackle connected speech. And the coolest part, you can do this solo, you know, no teacher required.
And the payoff is huge. When you start using connected speech, really well, you're speaking. It just sounds so much more natural, you know, more fluent. Like you said, think about something like the IELTS. If you're going through that, the examiners, they're definitely listening for that natural flow. It makes a difference.
For sure. And it's not just about like sounding impressive, right? I mean, it's honestly crucial for just understanding what people are saying to you. Native speakers, we use this stuff constantly, so the better your ears tuned in, the easier it'll be to follow, everything. Conversations, podcasts, movies, the whole 9 yards.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, we're going to break down the 4 main ways where it's kind of, they connect and change when we speak English naturally. Think of them as your foundation. Linking, assimilation, elision, and intrusion. Once you get a grip on these, you'll start hearing them everywhere. It's kind of like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
All right, let's jump right in. So connected speech, just to make sure we're all on the same page. What is it really at its core? I mean, we know it's more than just talking super fast, right?
Right. Connected speech is really about how those words, they mush together when we talk normally, you know. It's the way sounds at the end of one word interact with the sounds at the beginning of the next one. So instead of each word being this isolated, you know, island of sound, they kind of flow into each other, creating this stream of sound, I guess you could say.
It's like a sound smoothie, everything blended together. Okay, I like it. You mentioned 4 main features. Let's start with linking. What's the trick to getting that smooth connection?
Okay, so picture linking as like building a bridge between words. It's what happens when a word ends with a consonant sound and the next word starts with a vowel sound. So instead of having this little gap, you carry that consonant sound over, you know, you bridge it right into the next word. One of the most common examples, and you hear it all the time, is an apple. We don't usually say an apple with a big pause, right? That N sound at the end of it. And it just slides right into that sound of apple, and it ends up sounding more like an apple. It just comes out naturally.
Yeah, an apple, exactly. It does sound a lot more natural that way. Any other examples of this bridge building in action that we could, you know, really hear?
Oh, tons. Think about pick it up. Now, really listen to how a native speaker would say that. Often, that X sound at the end of pick, it just connects, it links right to the T sound at the beginning of it. And then that T in it goes right into the in up. It ends up sounding more like pick it up. The real key is there's no hard stop between those words, you see. It's just this continuous smooth flow.
Got it. That seamlessness is what we're after with linking. Okay, on to assimilation. It sounds like the sounds are becoming friends and changing to fit in or something.
That's a great way to put it. It's like sound peer pressure. Basically, a sound will change a bit to be more like the sound that's next to it. It's all about making things easier to say, smoother in the flow of speech. One you'll hear all the time is would you. Now, in faster natural speech, that D sound at the end of would often shifts to a D, to match the J at the beginning of you. So it comes out sounding like would you.
Interesting. So it's almost like the sounds are kind of, being considerate of our tongues and mouths, making things easier to move around.
Exactly. It's a totally natural tendency to want to simplify things, especially when we're speaking. Another one that pops up everywhere is don't you, becoming don't you. That T sound, it gets nudged by that J that follows it. And did you? Yeah. That often ends up sounding more like did you, right? You can really hear the D kind of morphing there. Even something as simple as good morning. Sometimes it comes out like good morning. That D sound, it can influence the M sound that comes after it. It's all about these little, almost like micro adjustments that happen as we speak.
So they're like, I don't know, borrowing qualities from each other to make things flow better. I like that. Okay, let's move on to elision. Elision, it sounds like something is just taking a shortcut and disappearing.
Nailed it. Elision is a fancy way of saying that, sometimes sounds get dropped. It happens when we speak naturally, especially when we pick up the pace a bit. Certain sounds, especially in parts of the word that aren't stressed, they can just vanish. Think about library. Lots of native speakers, they'll just say library. That first vowel sound, poof, gone.
Library, yeah. I probably say it that way all the time and don't even notice. What are some other common everyday examples of sounds taking a little vacation, as you put it?
Oh, probably. Becoming probably. That's a classic. And comfortable, that often gets shortened to comfortable. That middle vowel sound takes a break. You'll hear this with words like every becoming every, and family often sounds more like family. It's all about efficiency, Those sounds that aren't carrying a lot of weight in the word, they sometimes get a pass.
Sounds taking a holiday. Love it. Okay, last but not least, we have intrusion. This one sounds like, maybe an uninvited guest is showing up, a party crasher.
Not quite a party crasher, more like, more like a helpful friend that makes everything run a little smoother. Intrusion is when we add an extra sound between words, usually to make it easier to move between vowel sounds. The most common ones you'll hear are, J, W, and R. Take go on, for example. Sometimes you'll hear a tiny W sound pop up in between go and on, making it sound a little like go one.
Go one. Yeah, I can kind of hear that. Where else might we hear these little helpers popping up?
Ooh, draw a picture is a good one. A little W often sneaks in there between draw and A, so it sounds like draw a picture. And think about idea of. It's super common to hear an R sound there, making it idea of. And see it, that frequently gets a J sound, so it sounds like see it. These little extra sounds, they really do act like oil in the gears. They help those vowel sounds connect without any awkward pauses.
This is all so cool. So connected speech, it's this whole system of sounds interacting, changing, just to make this smooth, natural flow. Way more than just speeding things up, like we said earlier.
Exactly. And a really important point to remember is that connected speech, it's not about being lazy with pronunciation. It's just a natural, it's a fundamental part of how we speak English fluently. Native speakers, they do this without even thinking, and it really shapes the rhythm, the melody of the language.
Okay, so what about our listeners who are thinking, wow, this is a lot? Is connected speech like climbing Mount Everest or something?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it might seem like a lot to wrap your head around at first, but honestly, you can absolutely get better with focused practice. The key is consistency. Start by getting comfortable with those 4 features we talked about. Then really start tuning your ear to recognize them when you hear English being spoken. And the final step is practicing them in your own speech. It's a process for sure, but with the right approach, you'll make progress.
Okay, so step 1, get familiar with those features. Check. But then how do we train our ears to actually hear this stuff happening in real English? That seems super important, especially if you're learning on your own.
Couldn't agree more. You got to become a bit of a sound detective. Actively train your ears to pick out these features in the wild, in authentic spoken English. The best way to do that, immerse yourself. Podcasts, interviews, movies, TV shows, anything where you have native speakers just talking normally.
So we got to ditch that audio that's like specifically slowed down for learners and jump into the real deal.
Exactly. I mean, material made for learners, it has its place for sure. But when it comes to connected speech, you got to hear it the way it really happens out there. And when you're listening, really make an effort to pinpoint those moments of linking. Pay attention to how words at the end of phrases smoothly, seamlessly go right into the next one. Like, imagine you're listening to a podcast and someone says, "What are you doing?" See if you can hear how what and are blend together. It often ends up sounding more like, "What are you doing?"
And when we're trying to catch assimilation and elision, what should we be zeroing in on?
Well, for assimilation, really pay attention to places where it sounds like a sound is kind of changing depending on what comes right after it. Like when you hear, "Did you?" Consciously listen to see if it sounds more like, "Did you?" For elision, be on the lookout for sounds that seem to be missing. If comfortable sounds more like comfortable, well, that's elision doing its thing.
Okay, so actively looking for those subtle shifts, those missing sounds. Got it. What about intrusive sounds? Those little sneaky ones. Any tips on getting better at recognizing those?
Intrusive sounds, they can be a bit trickier, yeah. But really listen for those extra, almost whispered sounds that pop up between words, especially when one word ends and the next one begins with a vowel sound. If idea of sounds a bit like idea of, that's probably that intrusive R sound sneaking in there. And go on, morphing into go on is another great example to practice with.
So it's about becoming super aware of like the micro details, the fine print of spoken English.
Yeah, you got it. It's like training your ears to be super sensitive to those little nuances, those blends and shifts that happen naturally when we speak. The more you actively listen for them, the better you'll get at recognizing them. And that's step one before you can start using them in your own speech.
Wow, I can feel my ears working overtime just thinking about it. All right, so we're getting good at recognizing these features. Now, how do we make that jump from hearing them to actually, using them ourselves? That feels like the next big hurdle, especially if you're learning on your own.
Absolutely. And that's where the speaking practice comes in. There are two really powerful techniques that you can do completely solo: mimicking and shadowing. Let's start with shadowing.
Okay, walk us through shadowing. What's the idea behind it?
Imagine you're like a vocal shadow of a native speaker. You listen to a short bit of audio or a video, and as they're speaking, you try to perfectly copy what they're saying. But the key is you do it at the same time they're speaking. You're trying to match their pronunciation, the way their voice goes up and down, their intonation, and the overall rhythm and flow of how they're talking. You're their shadow.
Wow, all at the same time. That sounds pretty intense. Where's a good place to start if you're, brand new to shadowing?
It's always best to start small. Use short audio or video clips, maybe just a sentence or two at first, and pick audio that's spoken at a slightly slower pace. This gives you a better chance of keeping up and really focusing on getting it right. As you get better, you can gradually move to material that's a bit faster, closer to normal speaking speed, if you can find it.
Should we stick to audio only, or is there a benefit to adding video?
Using both can be really helpful. Video gives you those visual cues, like how the speaker's mouth is moving. That can sometimes give you a better idea of how those sounds are formed, how they're linked. Practicing with both audio and video will give you a more well-rounded understanding.
Yeah, visuals can definitely help. And what about the material itself? Anything specific we should be looking for?
I'd say it's good to practice with both scripted and unscripted stuff. Scripted stuff like movie scenes or podcast transcripts, they give you a set text to follow. Unscripted stuff like interviews or casual conversations, well, they throw you into the deep end a bit. They help you get used to more spontaneous speech. And the connected speech in that can be really varied. Both have their own benefits.
So shadowing helps us absorb the natural rhythm of English, the music of it. What about mimicking? How's that different?
Mimicking is a bit more, it's more focused, more deliberate. Instead of trying to repeat in real time, you listen to a short bit, like a sentence or two, and then you pause. And then you try to replicate what you just heard. You're really zeroing in on specific connected speech features. It's more about listening, absorbing, and then consciously trying to reproduce it.
So it's not about speed, but about accuracy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With mimicking, you might choose to focus on just one thing, like how linking is used in a particular phrase or how a specific assimilation happens. You listen to examples, and then you concentrate on making your speech match that as perfectly as you can.
Both of these techniques, shadowing and mimicking, it sounds like they need a lot of self-awareness, attention to detail. But if we're learning on our own, is there a way to get some feedback, without a teacher there to tell us how we're doing?
Absolutely. Recording yourself speaking and then, and this is key, listening back to it is really, really crucial for self-correction. Use your phone, your computer. Most devices have a voice recorder built in. Record yourself reading something, even just having a little chat with yourself.
All right, so we've recorded ourselves. Brave, I know. Now what? What should we be listening for when we hit play?
Put on your critic hat, Really listen to that recording. Compare your speech to the native speakers you've been shadowing or mimicking. Pinpoint the spots where the connected speech isn't quite there, or where it sounds different from the examples. Jot down any moments where you struggled, whether it's linking, assimilation, elision, or intrusion. Really listening to yourself is so valuable.
It's like we're becoming detectives of our own speech, looking for those little clues. It might feel a little weird to hear yourself at first, but it sounds like a super effective way to pinpoint what needs work.
It can be a little strange, yeah, but you get used to it pretty quickly. And the things you learn from it, they're worth it. It's almost like having your own pronunciation coach available 24/7.
Amazing. So we've got our listening practice strategies. We've got these awesome speaking techniques like shadowing and mimicking. And we know how important it is to record and analyze ourselves. What about online resources? What's out there that can really help us on our solo connected speech journey?
The internet is like a treasure trove for this. One type of resource that's super helpful, I'd say, are those pronunciation apps and websites. Many of them have interactive exercises, visual aids, things that can really make it easier to understand and practice different sounds and connected speech patterns. Things like Elsa Speak or Say It, English pronunciation, these can be great. A lot of these actually give you instant feedback on your pronunciation, which is a game changer when you're learning independently.
Yeah, having those interactive exercises with feedback, that sounds really helpful. What other online tools should we be looking for?
Well, we've talked about online dictionaries with audio examples, and I can't stress enough how great those are.
Yeah.
They let you hear how words are pronounced on their own, which is helpful for basic pronunciation. But the real magic is that they usually have example sentences, so you can hear how words sound in real speech, how they blend together. Websites like Merriam-Webster or the Cambridge Dictionary are awesome for this. And they often have both British and American English pronunciations, which is a bonus.
So it's hearing it solo and then hearing it, out in the wild in a sentence. I like it. And of course, YouTube, that's always the go-to for learning pretty much anything. Anything specific we should look for there.
Definitely. Look for channels that are specifically about English pronunciation and connected speech. Many of them do a great job breaking down tricky concepts into bite-sized pieces. Plus, they often use visuals to show you how to make the sounds, how to link words. Channels like Rachel's English or English Pronunciation Roadmap, those are fantastic starting points.
Awesome. And podcasts, we talked about those earlier for listening. Can they actually help with our speaking and connected speech too?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Podcasts and audiobooks, especially the ones that have transcripts, those are pure gold. The transcripts let you see how words are linked, where the assimilation, elision, and all that is happening, all while you're listening. You can actually follow along and actively pick out those features. And then you can use those same podcasts for shadowing and mimicking. Again, Luke's English podcast, BBC Learning English, those are both great. Just look for episodes that have those transcripts available.
So it's not just having the audio on in the background, it's really engaging with it, actively trying to pick out those features.
Precisely. It's all about sharpening your ears, becoming sensitive to those subtle changes, those blends that happen naturally when we speak. The more you consciously listen, the better you'll get at recognizing them. And that's a crucial step before you can start using them yourself.
I'm convinced. All right, so we've got the listening practice strategies, these amazing speaking techniques like shadowing and mimicking, and we know how important it is to record ourselves and really listen back. Now, what about online communities? Are there any that can really help us with connected speech, places where we can connect with other learners or maybe even get some help?
Oh, online language forums and communities, those can be lifesavers. They give you a chance to meet other learners from all over, sometimes even native speakers who are happy to lend a hand. You can ask questions, share resources you've found helpful, and even find people to practice speaking with. Reddit, Facebook groups, there are tons dedicated to English learning. They're a great place to start.
It sounds like there's this whole online support system out there for connected speech, which is really cool. So we've got a good grasp of what connected speech is, how to listen for it, some powerful techniques for speaking practice, and a whole toolkit of online resources. Now let's get down to brass tacks. What are some specific exercises we can do on our own to really target each of these features?
Great question. There are quite a few you can easily work into your routine. Let's start with sentence linking and something called phrase chunking. This is all about consciously connecting words smoothly within sentences, grouping them in a natural way. So instead of saying an apple with that little pause, really focus on making it an apple. Smooth it out. Same thing with what are you doing? Try saying it more like what Tarya doing. Really smoothing those transitions.
So it's about creating this seamless flow within phrases and sentences. Makes sense. But what about the tougher stuff, like assimilation and elision? How can we practice those specifically?
For assimilation and elision, focused repetition is your friend. Find examples of common assimilations like would you becoming would you, don't you, to don't you, or did you to did you. Listen to those examples. Really hear them and then repeat them, trying to match the sound changes as closely as you can. For elision, you can work with words like probably, which often becomes probably, or comfortable, becoming comfortable. Again, listen carefully to native speakers and pay attention to those dropped sounds. Then practice, practice, practice. You can find tons of example phrases online or make up your own with words you already know.
Repetition with a laser focus on those sound changes, those missing sounds. Okay, I get it. What about intrusive sounds? Those seem a little harder to practice. Any tips?
Intrusive sounds need a bit of conscious effort, yeah. Focus on the specific phrases where they usually pop up. For that intrusive W sound, practice go on as go on, or draw a picture as draw what picture. For the intrusive R, work with idea of becoming idea of. And for the intrusive J, try see it as see yet. Listen closely to how native speakers say these and then try to add that little extra sound in your own speech. It takes practice, but it makes a difference.
So isolate and conquer, basically. Practice those features in the context where they happen naturally. What about things like tongue twisters? Those are fun, but can they actually help with connected speech?
Tongue twisters and something called minimal pairs, they can be surprisingly useful. Maybe not directly for linking words together, but they do help with the underlying mechanics. tongue twisters that are all about making your articulation clearer, saying sounds properly, trying to say them fast and smoothly. That can really build control over your mouth and tongue, which is great for connected speech overall. Minimal pairs are words that differ by just one sound, like ship and sheep, and practicing those helps you hear those subtle differences. So indirectly, they make your connected speech clearer and easier for others to understand.
So not directly about linking, but they help build those foundational speaking skills. Makes sense. And finally, what about just speaking freely? Does improvisation have a role to play in all this?
Improvisation, free speaking, that's essential. It's how you take all these individual skills and start using them naturally, spontaneously. Pick a topic you like, something you're comfortable talking about, and just talk for a few minutes. Don't use a script. Just go for it. As you're talking, consciously try to use the connected speech features you've been practicing. Don't worry too much about perfection. The point is to make them feel more automatic, more natural in your everyday speech.
It's like taking it from the practice field to the big game, right? Even if that game is just talking to yourself for a few minutes, it's an important step.
Exactly. It's about moving from that very conscious, intentional practice to a more unconscious, natural way of using these features. The more you try to use connected speech in your regular speaking, the more natural it'll feel over time.
So we've covered exercises for each feature. We've talked about the importance of free speaking practice. But how do we make sure we're practicing consistently? What are some good strategies for really making connected speech part of our daily lives, making it a habit?
Consistency is everything when you're trying to improve any language skill, and connected speech is no different. A really effective strategy is setting realistic goals. Don't go overboard. Start with small, achievable things. Maybe focus on using linking correctly in a few sentences each day, and keep track of your progress. Even those small wins can really motivate you to keep going.
Breaking it down, making it manageable, and celebrating those small victories. I like that. What about the time commitment? How much time do we need to dedicate to this to actually see results?
It's much better to be consistent, to have a routine, even if it's short, than to try to cram in marathon practice sessions every once in a while. Even 15, 20 minutes a day dedicated to connected speech. It's going to be way more effective than, hours here and there. Treat it like an important appointment, something you wouldn't miss. Those short bursts of focused practice over time, that's where the magic happens.
Short and sweet, but daily. Got it. Now, what about when we're using English in our everyday life? When we're speaking or even just thinking in English, how can we make sure we're actually using what we've learned about connected speech?
This is where you really start to reap the benefits of all that practice. Whenever you're speaking English, even if it's just to yourself, make a conscious effort to apply what you've learned. Try linking words in simple phrases. Purposely use assimilation when you're using common expressions. The more you actively do this, the more natural it will become.
Actively putting it into practice, even in low pressure situations, love it. But let's be real, sometimes trying new things with your speech can feel a little, awkward, maybe even a little scary. How do we get past that?
Yeah, that's super common. It's important to remember that making mistakes, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a really important part of learning any language. Create a safe space for practice. That might be when you're alone or with a language partner who's also learning and gets it, or even in those online language groups where everyone is there to help each other improve. Don't let the fear of making mistakes or sounding a bit different stop you from trying these things out.
Finding that safe space to experiment, that's a great tip. And finally, how do we stay motivated, especially when we're learning on our own and maybe don't see those results right away?
Staying motivated takes effort, you're right. It helps to remind yourself of your goals, why you want to get better at this. and celebrate those wins, even the small ones. Find learning materials, resources that you actually enjoy, and connecting with other learners. That can give you a sense of community, you know. It helps to know you're not alone in this. Language learning, it's a journey. Remember that. Be consistent, be patient with yourself, and don't give up.
So, achievable goals, consistent practice, applying what we learn, pushing past that fear of making mistakes, and finding ways to stay motivated. It sounds like a recipe for success.
It really is. It's about making connected speech part of your English language learning journey.
Well, we've definitely done a deep dive into connected speech today. We've covered a lot of ground, from the basics to some really practical tips. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
The main takeaway I want you to leave with is this. You can absolutely get better at connected speech on your own. It takes effort, but it's totally doable. Remember those 4 key features: linking, assimilation, elision, intrusion. Train your ears by listening to real English, and practice speaking using techniques like shadowing and mimicking.
And don't forget those amazing resources we talked about: pronunciation apps, online dictionaries, YouTube channels, podcasts with transcripts, all that good stuff.
Right. And don't feel like you have to do everything at once. Start with 1 or 2 techniques that click for you, then add more as you get comfortable. Be consistent with your practice, be patient with yourself, and don't give up. That's the key.
Amazing. And one last thought, something to ponder after this deep dive.
Here's a thought. As you start paying more attention to these subtle changes in pronunciation, these links, these sound changes, the drop sounds, the added sounds, you won't just improve your own English, you'll also understand native speakers better. And even more than that, you'll start to appreciate how language really works, how it flows in natural conversation. So my challenge to you is to start really tuning into the English you hear every day. Notice how words flow together. See if you can pick out the specific features we talked about. It's fascinating, and honestly, it'll make your whole English learning experience so much richer.